So maybe the next time.
There's
I had
BJ.
dinner with Kathy Frank last night.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you.
Hi, good evening on the phone. It's David Kelsey. Who do we have on the phone so far?
Hey, David, it's Maria. How are you?
Hi, Maria. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. One more week of this crazy shoe, and I'll be doing better.
No, I feel like
Good
I'm
stuff.
moving off in the end.
Well, thank you for making it.
No, it's just
Absolutely.
I think we got a full coterie here.
beginning. Here.
Yeah.
Wow. First of the, well, it's not the first of the season that started.
Yeah. Of what?
And if it's next month, I think it's really off and running.
Yeah, we got some ministerial stuff that we need to take care of.
I'm hopeful.
All right. Well, it looks like we've got everyone here, so I will call the meeting to order. 7:31. Couple of quick things. First, congratulations to all the candidates who were successful on November 2nd, and welcome to new members. So, Kim Russell-Thompson and Catherine Thuma. Tuma. Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
I'll spell that phonetically. So that gets jumbled. Excellent. So we do have a relatively light agenda, which is good as an introduction for our newer members. As we get into budget season, we'll make sure that you guys are up to speed and feel free to ask questions of whomever you would like. Most of the members have been on now for at least, with the exception of Maria, at least a couple of years, if not dozens of years in some cases. So there's plenty institutional history to tap as required. So, all right, first order of business. Historic District Commission request for legal expense appropriation.
We have
Yes,
Jeff
sir.
Cooley, who's chairman of Historic District. He's going to approach the table.
You want to grab a chair, Jeff, and you can...
And there has been, and he'll get into it, but there's a difference between the written description of the Historic District and the North End versus the actual map. So the commission would like to get that rectified and explain what's involved.
Yeah, I think you got a nice memo from Russ Todd and John Noyes, who are very precise in their figuring all this out.
Got it. Because I don't have it. No one has it.
I made copies of the one that was sent to me.
Okay.
So
It wasn't distributed to the board.
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
We can just listen to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go into all the details unless you really want them, because there are probably 7 or 8 inconsistencies of note between the map and the written description. The written description, as it turns out, when it was done, there was a transcription error at some point in the course of that way back in 1971, and 1 or 2 lines were omitted, things like that. The map was drawn, and the map was supposedly going to be just a visual description, kind of an idea of what the Historic District Commission was about. In fact, it does not jive with what the wording is, and yet there were in '85 there was some consideration that the wording was always going to take precedent, but the wording, as I pointed out, is wrong. One good example of that is it talks about the very north end of the Historic District ending at the southern end of the green. But the map is clear. I mean, it's clear that in every intent, it should be the northern end of the green, and so on. And then there are the issues of it's 300 feet from the center of Lime Street, except when there are smaller lots, and then it's all that. So all of which is the way they set it up. But we are now 50 years later, and people do things differently or think differently than they did. And so the Historic District Commission cares that we get this squared away. the best way to do that is we have Michael Carey, who's a lawyer, and that we've used some funds to have him look over these things. It is clear that there is going to be a modest expense involved in getting it properly worded and make it sort of no loopholes, very clear to anybody who owns property in the Historic District Commission what they can and can't do, or whether they are or not in the Historic District Commission. It's not 100% clear exactly what the legal fees are going to be. We have spent, I think, about $500 so far. The thought was that there was going to be something in the $1,500 to $2,000 total expense. At Tim's recommendation and suggestion, what the HDC is coming to you all for is an assurance that if we go ahead and have this squared away by Michael Carey with an expectation that the fees would be upwards of, but no more than $2,000, that the town would pay that, and we wouldn't stick that. We got to pay them.
Right.
So we have to assure Michael Carey that he'll be paid, and that the proper wording, the proper sort of form for the HDC is created.
So-
I guess as opposed to doing an appropriation now, it might be a suggestion to be aware of it. There is a line in the historic budget for $500, and perhaps once the work is done, we can be sure exactly where it all comes out in case there's any court that might require extra innings. So I think we've done it before where we're aware of something, and then once we're clear what the amount is, then we can more precisely make an appropriation as opposed to doing it now and then not being certain exactly where the legal expense
Fees come out to. So rather than coming to you for $1,000 or $1,500, come to you with the idea that, will you please pay this bill? If it comes out at $1,950, but it might come out at $1,450. So whatever it is, within reason, obviously, $2,000 is being kind of a limit.
But it's customary for us in a situation like this to appropriate an amount not to exceed X. So, why don't we just agree to appropriate up to $2,000, and if it comes out to less, so be it.
That seems to me to probably be...
Either way.
Total 2,500 with the 500 that's on the legal line, or has some of that been spent, Jeff?
Yeah.
Some of the 500 has already been spent?
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're real safe that way. If the Board of Finance is good by that, then I feel very confident we'll get it all squared away.
Is 2,000 the right number?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I guess, yeah.
It should be done. Let it be done.
It is spoken.
Okay. Motion? Right, so I'll make a motion. We appropriate up to $2,000 to clarify the legal parameters of the historic district.
Let it be done.
Rob, let it be done.
And that would be to the legal line. Historic legal.
There won't be any delay, of a meeting or anything like that. This way you'll have the funds.
Right.
What's the timing of you thinking?
We're interested in getting it done sooner than later. There is a lot up at number 1 Boston Post Road that is being subdivided, and there is it's a classic example of where, with the property subdivided, the property owner will have we just want to make sure that he doesn't go and build something that is inappropriate in what is legally the Historic District Commission, and so we need to know that it is legally the Historic District Commission. So there is that immediate need to get it solved. So we're going to act on this relatively quickly.
Great. Any other questions or discussion?
Second.
Rob seconded it.
Second, sort of.
Nicole?
So year-to-date, we just got another bill in, so you're up to 800 year-to-date already spent for this sort of district. I just sent it to Mark and Hanson yesterday.
Right.
So I just want to make you aware of that. And then there's the additional appropriation for 2,000. We have already 500 in there, so are you appropriating an additional 2,000 or 1,500 to get 2,000?
The motion was for an additional 2,000.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Just as a quick aside, I'm not going to waste your time, but a gentleman came in the gallery the other day he was looking at a couple different properties on Lime Street, they're from California, and I don't know if they're going to end up buying or not, but he was saying how wildly surprised and impressed he was by what a beautiful street Lime Street was. And I said, well, you realize it's a historic district of the town. And he said, oh no, what's that? So I gave him a little bit of background on that. And he said, wow, how great is that you all have something like that going on. So it's a good thing to support, and we appreciate it, as I think everybody will. So
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Okay, financial reports. Sure.
All right, this is for the report through October. Property taxes were a little over $20 million, or almost 56%. In October, which is very good for us. We received reimbursements from Town Line for Rogers Lake and Senior Town Park. Those amounts. Those amounts include any capital reimbursement as well. For the remitting of the sales tax, it has taken me over years to get a sales tax permit from the state of Connecticut, because all the workers are working from home, and when you call them, you hear the wife screaming in the background for lunch, and it's just been a nightmare. But we did finally get it, and I had to go back and do January through September, because they want you to do it monthly, and all of those taxes, which equal almost 11,000, have been remitted, and they offset our parking revenue because a portion of that. So it's something we can net as opposed to reporting gross. We've received the first quarter for the ECS funding, $92,633, and for emergency management and grant reimbursements, almost $149,000. Millstone is $49,000, and Isaiah reimbursement is $93,000. For expenditure,
Is that what we were expecting for the storm? Do we know?
what do you mean by?
We obviously have to fill paperwork out to apply for it. Were we expecting 93,000?
don't get the submission
Okay.
what date does, so I'm just seeing the deposit of the account, and I see what it's for, but I can't tell you
Okay.
if that's what we were expecting.
Nicole, I don't understand the sales tax thing. Can you explain to me how that works? So we get revenue from from parking revenue, then we have to pay some of that to the state of Connecticut?
Right, so a year or two ago, the state decided that municipalities have to charge sales tax for seasonal parking.
Okay.
So, what we do, the beach passes are included just by the way they're described.
Right, so
The kiosk. Well, and so we, this year, added 6.5%. We increased the price of those parking permits.
Mm-hmm.
And so that 6.35% has to be taken in by us and then remitted to the state of Connecticut.
Right, so the $10,688 is money that we pay to the state of Connecticut.
Right.
So you have it under revenue rather than expenditures because it's a negative revenue?
Because it's one thing that I can net. So yes.
Well, but in any event, it's a disbursement. We have to pay.
Offset the revenue that we've collected.
Okay.
We do the same with
the confusion for me was why it's under revenues rather than expenditures.
there's not a lot of instances where I can net expenditures against revenue type of thing. This is one of them.
That's fine.
Okay. Does that make sense to everyone?
Mm-hmm.
For expenditures, under the treasurer's office, I paid almost $12,000 for August, the audit progress billing. As I mentioned in the email, about a week ago, we are expecting to go on extension. All of our reports and filings have to be finished by December 31st, and due to situations here and with the auditors, we are probably going to have an extension at least through January 31st. So those reports will be late to you, as you know, that you usually get them in December.
What are the actual reports that are due December 31st? Because we don't get the full audit.
The financial report that I give to you,
Right.
that's due to the state. There's other miscellaneous reports that have to get sent to every agency that we get money from.
Yeah.
So it's all done electronically by the auditors.
Yeah.
But we won't have this final. We won't have all that finalized.
But it's not the audit that we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is the full audit with footnotes
Yes.
that's required by December 31st?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Under special deductions, we've made the first quarter payment for a pension of the town employees. For Storm Henri, we've spent $14,000 year to date. We'll also be adding another line for Storm Ida because that did get approved. We'll be getting reimbursed for some of that as well. For police officer overtime, as you can see, we're spending a lot through October 31st, and I expect this only to get worse. We are down 2 officers now. One is on administrative leave, and another one is on a personal leave that will be at least a couple months. So I'm not sure what the resident trooper is going to do about it, but obviously I would expect a lot more overtime. Police parking enforcement, which is the Rangers, this is over budget by $22,000 year to date, and we still have May and June to go for next year. So again, I expect the whole police department to be over, and by an amount that probably will have to go to town meeting.
Nicole, is that the same number? I didn't check last month's financials.
This is the same as last.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we didn't get anything additional subsequent, because I remember there was a delay in us getting those figures from the trooper. Yeah.
Well, I know he does have one of the Rangers that does a lot of administrative things, for dealing with the kiosks, and if there's, a problem with the software has to be updated, and dealing with changing parking rates and all of that. So he does have someone that kind of works administratively for him.
On an ongoing basis.
I haven't seen anything in about a month.
Yeah.
But sometimes
it doesn't feel like he's sitting on a big...
No. He's
right.
current and sending in timesheets, so.
And Nicole, is it, when you say it's over budget by $22,000, is that over the annual budget or over a year-to-date budget?
The annual budget.
We budgeted 40 for that, and it's already 61.
Mm-hmm.
That's
yeah.
62.
And have we gotten any understanding of why it's so far over budget?
Well, I can tell you what my point, just from the finance point of view, is that there were several Rangers that continued to work overtime throughout the summer. There's probably 4 or 5 of them that racked up so much overtime, and I'm not sure why. I don't know. There were other Rangers. So I'm not sure if it's a scheduling thing, if it was a...
Well, but so that's a substantive question. I don't know, Tim, whether you have any answer to this, is whether the demand for Ranger services for some reason during this past summer was extraordinary, or whether there was some other lack of control over the use of the Ranger.
Well, the COVID was a minor factor, so I think it's bad fiscal management, because without the COVID, we did maintain a presence there, which we would do normally. So I think it's a situation we gotta figure out what we're gonna do for the rest of the year.
And we met with the resident state trooper along with one of our town guys. This was in late summer. And what he told us at that point was, hey, there's a need. I'm going to fulfill the need, and I'll worry about the budget later. Which there was a conversation had about that, obviously. So this budget, and he'd already increased the hours for last year's budget.
The police overtime.
Right.
Not Ranger.
Right, the police overtime. No, he'd also boosted the Ranger hours.
That was 40.
Well, the Rangers stayed the same, 40/40.
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah, it was the police overtime that we increased by
40 to 80.
Yeah.
Yeah, doubled.
At any rate, he was concerned about services rather than the budget, so not focused on what he needs to be. Hopefully with Ward now in, office, maybe he can be a good guide for this guy, because it's his first tour of duty as a resident state trooper, too.
My recollection, as we had the same conversation a month ago, is that maybe you, David, or some other folks from this finance committee were going to meet with Matt Ward to try to understand kind of the substantive reasons for the overage and what we can do going forward. You don't remember that?
No.
So then that's the question, whether some folks from the Board of Finance. So nobody at the table right now, as I understand it, I hear the words, right? Well, we need more services. But the detail of, well, what were the more services and, was this the most cost-effective way to do it? It seems to me that the Board of Finance would benefit from more detail, more of a detailed answer.
I think haven't we been asking for more detail for a couple of months now? And I appreciate you're here tonight, but we've asked this question and no one said, gee, the overtime is racking up over and over again.
That's because the numbers...
So it's great that you're here because
Expressed my concerns on those two.
I know you have expressed your concerns.
Several times for the last couple months. Mm-hmm. My concern was that Rangers were working the private Point of Woods security detail and not putting it as private duty, because that's what I've heard.
I missed the meeting, but I wasn't aware that they were working for Point of Woods and charging the town.
I guess I would leave it because Board of Finance was pretty active in everything with the Board of Selectmen, and you guys got to figure out what the deal is. We had a very stern conversation with the resident state trooper, but it was August. All this time, it already basically happened at that point.
It changed in a month. So
right.
So I have one question based on what you said. You said, and correct me if I misheard, but there were 4 to 5 Rangers that racked up a huge amount of the overtime. How many Rangers are there in total? There were Rangers that weren't coming close to reaching overtime, that weren't, was it the scheduling?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
Yeah,
the resident trooper doesn't answer to me.
Okay, that's fair.
There were Rangers available that would not put them over.
I can't say that.
Right.
Okay.
All I know is that there was
But there's more than 5 Rangers.
4 or 5 that racked up so much OT. It
Sure.
was
So I think the critical conversation is
If you
going
had,
to be...
that's the question.
Right, and well, we don't know.
If we don't.
13?
Okay, okay, so right there, if you spread that out properly, it's not overtime, it's straight time, and you don't have a budget issue.
To be properly informed as to the appropriate budget for 22.
yeah, and that's why we do have specialists. But so that probably falls within the purview of the specialists.
Correct.
Meeting with them, but having
But you're right, it's the Board of Selectmen in the first instance, and then the specialists in the second instance.
right, yeah.
Go on. I did some transfers out to other funds for reval, sanitation, recycling, public works vehicle, and town building improvement and bus barn in October. I think I've done mostly all the transfers out year to date. Under capital, police car accessories, that $14,000 was that the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance agreed to pay, and additional appropriation for that. For the transfer station, we've spent $71,000 from commercial construction, Swaney Electric, and Wise Construction. On the back page, under carryover, we put $2,500 deposit for the consulting group. We continue to pay building improvement. The total contract was $18,500. We spent the $15,000 from the town, and the rest now will be coming from the senior board fund. And for the Grassy Hill Road Bridge, $3,600 to Nathan Davidson. This is a carryover line that is now exhausted, so the engineering would have to fall under the selectman's office. Because the rest of the Grassy Hill Road Bridge budget is for construction only. Under other funds, we've spent $6,000 for laptops. That's for some for a laptop pool down in the selectman's office, and they loan them out to clerks or whoever needs them from town hall, as well as we did fund one specific for the finance office so that my assistant and I can take it home. It's specifically loaded with our accounting software, so if anything happened, we could still pay things off of that. So that was a big thing for us to be able to accomplish. $4,900 for the new truck that we've already paid for. This is just for the plow. Under road improvement, Mile Creek Road, the paving, and some of the other side work that's needed was about 1.3. And we put a deposit on the Haynes Park improvement for the gazebo pavilion of $5,800.
Nicole, just a quick clarification for the senior center architect. That's split with Lime, I assume, right?
Yep. Well, there's two equal pools of money, and we use the town money first, the town's money, and then the senior money is now being used.
But that first 15 grand was combined Lime and Lime.
Yeah, I will build that up for that. That's it for
Okay, old business. Anybody have any other questions for Nicole?
How many laptops were in that $5,800?
We get 2 or 3 for you guys now.
Two.
And then sort of mine was a little bit of the one on there, higher grade, had one.
Oh, I get that.
That 5,900 counts the setup by our consultant.
Yep,
So
exactly.
Probably almost half the cost is that.
I just remembered that we had a pool that I wanted to see that we finally used it because it seems to be going on.
Okay. Anything else? Soundview Sidewalk Project.
Distribute. Hand out here.
This should have gone to everybody as well. This was the change order number 3.
That came today.
Yep.
And
I
honestly,
saw
time
that. I didn't read it.
Look
I
at
saw
it.
it came.
Thank you.
As you know, the sidewalks are principally done, but there are some lingering things to be done on the sidewalks, and then in addition there is the transportation hub, so-called, that is in the works. So the first page is a recap of what's been spent, and below are some anticipated charges. I'm trying to gather everything together to see where we're coming out with this thing. You can see in the middle of the first page there, under the column grant eligible, there's $185,009, which is the first payment to the contractor. And down under the anticipated charges at the bottom, there are 2 additional applications that have been held up because there's remaining work to be done in both cases. There are also 3 change orders that are that are anticipated. One is for some curbing at Cross Lane, a signpost and some signage, and a sidewalk ramp where in front of that church down there's a crosswalk that goes across 156. So when it gets to the north side, there's going to have a proper sidewalk ramp going up into the new sidewalk where the bus shelter will be. And as we flip the page there's been some additional work at Teddy's Pizza, 264 Shore Road, to replace some blacktop. There's retainage that will need to be paid when the job is complete. And BSC, they put out some estimates of what they think their charges will be, and these are the stubs, if you will, on what remains to be spent. The transit hub itself, the core improvements are $44,100, and as we know, the transportation hub, you come in near the police department, there's a road that goes through the town property between the two streets, and the shelter will be situated closer to the police station. So the core improvements would be to improve the existing boxed-in road, a gravel road, a couple of aprons, concrete aprons, one on each end, some additional sidewalk to get from the existing sidewalk to the shelter, a pad for the shelter, grading, loam and seed, and some pavement where the bus will stop. That's in the 44,000. The incidentals are contemplated to be some decorative pilings with rope, bicycle repair station, bicycle rack, bench, posts, rope fence, signage, some fencing, and that constitutes the incidentals. And then landscaping, which would be primarily on the north end of the property where the residences are located, about 21 trees around the property, some of which would be up to the bus shelter, 18, 7, 50. So then we don't really have a good handle on what BSC would charge to be the construction supervisor of the bus shelter itself. So that's a task that some of which would be eligible and some of which would be ineligible. And then let's see, there's another smaller item that's ineligible for some transit work but now. And I'm just putting some contingency in there because there really, who knows what might come along before the project. So without the BSC billing information for the transit, it looks like it would be about $384,000 that could be applied against the grant. And if you had the contingency in there, which some of it might be reimbursable, but if it's not, some additional ineligible, which would total about $51,000. So that would you can get about $435,000. I know that Mary Jo has a different spreadsheet, and I don't know if she's on the phone, but I think the numbers come up fairly similar. And we know that the town has $400,000 budgeted for this project, both for eligible and ineligible expenses. So depending on where it comes out, there's going to be money that would be needed to be spent above the 400,000. If this were to be a correct rendition, which we know that to be determined, we don't have those numbers yet, but it would appear that we wouldn't use all the grant money because the eligible expenses might pop out of 380 or 390, to be determined. You're never going to, unless you really spend a lot more money, you're not going to use the full grant amount. And as I understand it, Nicole, if we underspend, if we do not use grant money, we would return whatever we don't use under the 400,000 we receive back to the state of Connecticut, right? And that's in deferred revenue, so it really wouldn't change the town's balance sheet. It's not part of the surplus or anything like that, right?
No, separate on the balance sheet and deferred revenue, so it won't change.
Yeah.
Anything.
Okay. So the fees which BSC, remember they estimated it would be $15,000 for their fees that would be eligible under the grant, and 15 that would be ineligible, and then they added some additional monies to 4,000 and 2,500, and then the transit hub to get the design work going. They had two amounts that they said 6,500 and 2,500, and then you can see under those columns we have spent 16,000 and 17,005 about. So their estimates are holding for the gateway, the sidewalk part of it. The transit hub, we know that once the design, that design work is done, which is $9,000 when you add the two together, they're probably going to be okay on that, but then there'll be a phase when they actually start doing the work. They would be monitoring and so forth, so there'll be additional, that's why that to be determined is up above. So clearly there will ultimately be a need for an appropriation. One thing that's a little bit of a time pressure, the contractor had put together the specifications for the transit hub and is looking for guidance to start doing stuff. But I feel uncomfortable doing anything about that at this point because we have only $400,000 available in the budget to do all this, and if we spend, say, the 435 plus some engineering, it's hard to say where the number might be, but call it toward 450, let's say, to do the whole deal. That would require a selectmen, finance, and town meeting for the extra 50,000 above and beyond the 400,000 that's in the budget right now. So the amount of money that we've spent because we haven't paid the contractor for the applications 2 and 3 and so forth. We're pretty well below the 400,000 at this point, but
in terms of outlays.
In terms of cash outlays.
Right.
But once he wraps up the amount of work to finish up is not that significant. And so he could be picking up the 47 and the 14 in pretty short order, and we'll be creeping toward that 400. There's been this arm wrestling about an appropriation between the committee and myself saying, you have 400 to spend, that's it, right now. So be careful what we promise. And so if the contractor's looking for signatures saying, let's go on the bus proposal, I think we need to have a conversation about, do we do everything? Now, it's true that if you spend money that's eligible, the grant will repay the town for those dollars. So, to the extent that, if you spend, let's say, all the grant money and you get $400 back from the state of Connecticut, that's fine. But we would then have to increase the amount of money for the project, I'd say by $50,000 to get there. So, that we've got to come out of surplus money. If we don't do those improvements, we send money back to the state of Connecticut and we don't get the improvements. So, you take your choice. So, I don't think we have to make any decision right today, but I've been trying to, burning the midnight oil, trying to get these numbers a little closer, and I know that Joe is done a similar rundown.
Yeah, and her numbers were basically run on top of yours, and then basically almost at 400,000. So if we did something incrementally, it's going to cost some, because that was in the email that she sent today. But so or rather in summary, so kind of at the 400,000 that we appropriated as a town, that's the overall budget, whether it's reimbursable or not.
Yep.
Feels like it's going to be about 450 if we do the wish list or dial back. Because I remember the last couple of meetings, it maybe was last meeting, it could have been 2 meetings ago, we had the layout for the bus shelter, but it was like, I don't know, 35 grand for landscaping, and there were some big numbers in there that were a little bit head scratchy. So my question is, between the 400 that we've already appropriated and the 450 that you think we might be coming up with, is that what is everything that people would like to do, or could it be more than the 50
Well, the
grand?
landscaping you mentioned has been reduced to 18.7. I think it was 30-something.
Right.
The incidentals are probably about the same. So I guess we could, scrutinize this list and see if something jumps out.
But from Board of Finance perspective, so tonight, no action necessary.
I don't think we need it, but I think we're going to need it pretty soon.
Right. So the committee will make their recommendations. The Board of Selectmen needs to vote on it.
Yeah.
And then needs to come to the Board of Finance. If we need an additional appropriation, then we...
And I think we just have to say to the contractor that we cannot sign his thing for, it's not all of 90, there's a small amount of money that belongs somewhere else, but it's probably about 95,000 for the bus shelter. And the base bus shelter, if you just put the pavement and the sidewalks and stuff, that's about 44,000. If you do the full Monty, it's closer to 95,000.
Okay. Heartening that that's down from the 128 or whatever we had before.
So let me ask Tim, David. Mary Jo's email talks about change order number 3. What does, and I apologize, I should have read it more closely, what does change order number 3 apply to? And what I mean by that is, with respect to the transit hub, there are several numbers, right? You've got 44.1 for the 4 improvements and incidentals and landscaping. What does change order number 3 apply to?
Change order number 3 is if you were to walk across the crosswalk at that church down there to the bus shelter, there's a curb, and you need to make that curb a sloped curb with the nubby pedestrian thing and mesh it and have it slope and all that. So to make that a proper handicap access curb seems like a lot of money, but that's what number 3 is.
And how much money is that?
$3,500.
So that's just $3,500. Oh, okay. But now, what is being held up? Are we talking about all of the bus shelters, starting with the 44.1, or has some of this already been approved and is
To answer
going
your question, I'm
forward.
going back to the minutes from September. It says the committee voted to proceed with the transit hub, $41,950. So that answers your...
41,000 as opposed to 44,000?
Yeah, this says $41,950, and based on how things work out, possibly additional eligible items can be considered. So as I read the minutes, it sounds like we agreed we're going to do a transit hub for let's just call it
Right.
$42,000.
The Chevy version.
The Chevy version.
Right.
And then there was going to be discussion on some of these other things like landscaping,
Right.
amenities, some of these other...
That sounds right, Matt.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, something is being held in suspense tonight, because you're saying, Tim, that you're not comfortable authorizing X. So my question is, what is X? What is it of these expenses that is being held in abeyance?
We would need to be sure, if we approve the new estimate of $44,100 for the core bus shelter, we have to make sure that plus all the rest of these anticipated expenses would come in under $400,000.
Okay, so as Matt just said, we've already approved something almost to the
The
44,000.
committee has approved it, yes.
Yeah, and...
But they haven't signed anything with, that requires...
But the Board of Finance approved up to 42 or whatever it was.
I don't know that the Board of Finance...
Yeah, I don't think we voted.
I think it was informational.
It was,
It was
committee approved it.
Ad hoc
Committee approved, right.
Oh, so the committee, the Sound View Committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, but the
Those minutes aren't approved yet either.
but we didn't vote on that.
No.
The committee approved.
Now, if it fits,
And we didn't approve
if it were to fit under the 400,000 expenditure line, it wouldn't require any action because there's adequate funding for it, because the sidewalk came in so low. So I suppose a fallback would be to say we can do the core unless the contractor says, well, I don't want to mobilize twice.
Yeah, and you're also, I'm inferring, saying, well, maybe the core on a standalone basis isn't sufficient. We got to do something more than the core. The question is, how much more than the core? And I'm hearing that that hasn't been decided yet by the Board of Selectmen. So back to David's point, it does seem to me that the Board of Selectmen, working with the committee, has to decide what you guys want to do, and to the extent that it exceeds 400,000, then that's a fact, and we have to deal with that, whether it's a town meeting or whatever it
Definitely
is.
a town meeting.
But I agree with David that at this moment, the Board of Finance doesn't have something to vote on.
But also looking at this and understanding it a bit more, what you're saying, Tim, is if we do, so sidewalks are all done, but we've got a few bills, but that's already accounted for in here. What we haven't started yet are Transit Hub core improvements, 44.1, Transit Hub incidentals, 31.6, Transit Hub landscaping, 18.750. If we were to do all of those, it would put us at total reimbursables of $384,500 plus non-reimbursables of $51,000, which gets you a total project cost of $435,000, which is
And then there'd be also some engineering.
the TBDs, which is $15,000 of construction, hopefully less, but so that's where you're coming up with the $450,000, right?
Correct.
So if we set the guys loose today to do the core improvements, those are still going to need oversight, so you're still going to have some sort of weird overage, and you still got the incidentals and the landscaping out. So I guess booting it back to, well, not booting it back, but making sure that the selectmen have a recommendation for us is the next step before we can do anything.
Yeah.
And it would feel like, $50,000 extra would be that appropriation, but that's based upon your guys' conversation with Andy.
Yeah.
But Tim, if, according to this sheet, we've already spent $34,256 of grant ineligible funds, right?
Yes.
So that we're in for anyway.
So it's only 7.
right? And so you're only looking to add $17,000 to that to do the remainder of the project.
No, but the overall appropriation is 400,000, whether it's ineligible or eligible.
Right.
But
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
1,700 plus the 34,
With the
whatever
thing
is,
is 34,000
is that
has to come out of our
50,000.
pocket, you know, and it can't be.
But the town,
Yeah.
but we voted as a town for a $400,000 project.
Right.
We voted for the gross.
Pocket or.
And then that 400,000 is the state grant. So that's where it comes into play that we'd have to vote.
Unfortunately, when the project was being structured, there was no amount of money in addition for the ineligible stuff. Maybe people didn't realize it would be ineligible or whatever, but, it's rearing its head now. So the 15,000 of contingency, the last line item in that anticipated expenses, may not be used, but I just get uncomfortable, trying to guess. So I'd rather come in higher and then we can not use it.
It feels like it's going to be at least 20,000, and that's the threshold to have to go.
Well, it's going to be 50 if we do the whole thing.
Well, that includes the contingency.
Plus the TV.
But there's the TBD.
So I'm saying at a minimum,
Yeah.
it could be 420, but feels like it's going to be 450.
Yeah.
If we do
Over
the
400,
slightly
no matter how you
scale
look
down.
at it.
to
Right.
not-
Few less.
I think the next step would be to go back to the committee with this and compare it to their sheet and say, if they're within a 9 iron of each other, then we press the engineer, say, what do you expect you will charge to monitor the project of the transit hub once the design work is done?
Right.
Fill those blanks in, see how we come out.
Yeah.
And then make a value judgment. Do we need all these trees? Do we need all these improvements, the nice... It's grant eligible, so you say, well, we're stupid not to do it and get the money back from the state, but it's going to require the appropriation.
Yeah, that's the tension.
But I mean, this 400,000 was originally for Soundview sidewalks.
Right.
And because they didn't cost 400,000, we were able to expand it to 156 and have that work done. And then it is expanding to the transit hut.
Yeah, I
Try to use up as much of the 400,000.
I got to figure out how to spend it properly.
Right.
And that's not our call. That's the committee and the selectmen, correct?
Well, again, the
I mean,
committee is...
then it'll come back to us.
Yeah. So, okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it's trying to get as good an update as possible, but it's
Feels like it could come back to us for $50,000 additional.
And Tim, if it does, would it be for the January town meeting
it could well be.
as opposed to having a special town meeting on it?
I thought we were going to have a town meeting between now and the end of the year for Ames, but they're still working through some kinks in that. So if nothing else, the town meeting, which is the fourth Monday of January, we could have an agenda item for that. That's a given. And hopefully, if the contractor freaks out and says, gee, I don't know if we can wait that long, but one would hope. So we'll have to see what goes. I suppose the worst case is you could go with a core project and stay under the 400, quite possibly. But we'll work on it some more.
It's just weather-wise, can this stuff be put off until that late into January, February? Or is this stuff that, is this going to be a whole different project, having to wait till the spring?
Any kind of bituminous is not going to be available. And concrete they can do with heaters and stuff, but it's an upcharge. So, this is not vital to get this thing in by February 1st or something, you can wait. But then the contractor gets busy too on other matters, so.
Okay. Soundview sewers up-a-date.
Let's see. As we know, the bids went out. The second round of bids went out, and while slightly better, they're still high. And as you know, we have 3 private beaches who would share in the shared infrastructure along with O-Line plus you. So the bids for the shared infrastructure, which includes the collection pipe from the border of O-Line Shores and Old Colony, the pipe will go west to Portland Avenue and up slightly to the pump station. That's the collection pipe. The pump station is an expensive building that has a lot of piping coming into it and all kinds of pumps. And then leaving the pump house would be a force main, it's called, which would go up Portland, get to 156, make a right, and go to East Line to the pump station in East Line. So the four entities have an agreement whereby each entity would pay a share of the shared infrastructure. O-Line, by virtue of what they call equivalent dwelling unit, which is basically the sum of the houses or properties, we pay about 30%, 29% of the shared infrastructure, and then the other three beaches pay the rest. The concern, Rich is not overly concerned about the town because we have the bond issue of $9 million, but the beaches may be getting over what they have allocated for the project. And some of them are actually doing more than just the sewer, the infrastructure, and the gravity sewer. A lot of them are doing their own road improvements, such as Point of Woods did when they did it. So if they exceed what they have been authorized to spend, they'd have to get approval within their own beaches, because these private beaches, they're little mini municipalities, and they have their own mill rates, and they pay town taxes, so they have to get permission to spend the money, sort of like the town of O-Line has to. Would any one of them drop out for any reason, they would incur the wrath of the DEEP, because they're under a mandate, as we are, but it would throw a monkey wrench into the rest of it, because everybody would have to pay their share of the common assets. So the engineers working through, looking at the bids, and everybody's trying to see where they're going to come out. In addition, you have these intra-municipal agreements. So as the material leaves O-Line in the pipe, you have to have an agreement with East Lyme and Waterford to use their pipes and pump stations. And you have to have an agreement with the City of New London to use their wastewater facility plant. We have accomplished the agreement with New London, which was not easy. And we've been held back dealing with East Lyme Waterford because of the election in East Lyme, but we want to get back talking to them. And there are fees that must be, we have to prepare to pay fees. There's an upfront fee to both intermunicipal agreements. When you start pumping, you have to pay them over 20 years. And then, of course, once you start flowing, you have to pay charges on a 6-month basis. So we're in a tender spot because we're not 100% sure how this is all going to turn out. Complicating it, if it isn't complicated enough, the state of Connecticut has repaved 156 from the top 156 at Fox Hop Yard down to Essex Savings, and they most definitely want to pave the rest of it to East Lyme. They've been holding back at our begging, to say, don't, we're trying to get this force main in, so please don't pave it. They were to become impatient, say we're proceeding to pave it this summer, whether you're there or not. That would add more cost to it, because we'd have to dig it up and repave it again. So we haven't received information on what the gravity sewer will cost. There's probably, an estimate of some sort, but that's until you get bids, you don't really know. So that, for Sound View, would be to install the sewers north and south of 156 to 200 and some odd properties. So if the bids are deemed to be too high because of the supply chain, metals high, goods and services are hard to get, it may be that there'll be a request to not proceed at this time and wait for hopefully better pricing later on, whatever that may be. So it's a very unsettled situation, this whole thing. We do want to get the agreement with East Lyme and Waterford nailed down, because that's something that is a standard thing to do, and it shouldn't be that impossible. But in terms of whether this bid is as good as it gets for the future, we're not sure. I think a lot of, just looking at gas price and everything else, everything's pretty darn expensive. So if you waited a year, I don't know how long we can wait with the DEP, because they're drumming their fingers too, saying, clean up the sound. So
Tim, but from the town's perspective, right, we've gotten in place now agreements with the 3 beaches and agreement on the pump house, cost sharing and that sort of thing. Is that right or no?
Exactly what we have is an agreement to join a cost share agreement, because the 3 beaches are in a cost sharing agreement.
Right.
They were ahead of us.
Yeah.
They don't want to have us join their cost sharing agreement until we have these intermunicipal agreements signed, sealed, and delivered, because...
So have they separately obtained their capacity requirement for East Lyme and for Waterford?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but they've made their peace with those 2 towns, and all we're talking about is Soundview's capacity with those 2 towns?
The way it worked is the 3 beaches secured an allocation of 300,000 gallons per day from New London and from the 2 towns to go flow through. The 300,000 is to be used 120,000 gallons for the 3 beaches, 50,000 gallons for O-Line, and 130,000 reserve capacity. It could be, if Hawks Nest were ever required to join.
No, I think Diebold needs it.
Diebold does need it.
So that's the cost sharing agreement, more or less. I mean, the cost sharing agreement's for the shared infrastructure, but they've made the deal for the 300,000 a day. So when we came into the picture with New London, we said, okay, we're ready to sign up just like they did for the unit price and stuff. And the fellow over there said, well, it might be a little more expensive than they have it per unit cost. And we said, why? And he said, because. So we actually hired a lobbyist, lawyer type, and he achieved some savings for us, but not all. So that's the games people play.
But that agreement
I don't understand. But wait a minute. What I heard you say was that the Soundview allotment is within the 300,000, right?
Soundview Town of O-Line is 50 out of the 300.
Right, but I thought you said they made a deal for 300,000.
Yep.
So if they made a deal for 300,000 and we're a subset of the 300,000, why is there more negotiating?
Because New London decided that's what they wanted to do. It's not...
Because that agreement was with the 3 beaches and didn't include...
Well, it should have. I mean, it was pretty evident this is what it was all about.
But we are not party to that agreement. They got their capacity with East Lyme and Waterford and New London. They got the 300,000, but Town of Old Lyme is not part of those agreements. So then, you know, Mr. X shows up and he says, oh, you want to be part of the agreement?
Right.
Well, you've got the capacity, but the price for you to join the agreement is going to be X, Y, and Z.
So that's extortion. You'd have to look at the words of the agreement to see whether the agreement contemplated that the 300,000 may be shared with another party, i.e. the Town of Old Lyme.
Yeah.
Everybody knew we were coming in, but they just used this time factor to
I'm sure that somebody's reviewing that.
Yeah. So once we get East Lyme squared away, which they say, yeah, you can come in at the same price as the others, that's a fair thing. But we just have to have another.
It sounds like the real problem is the actual cost of construction. And what's the delta between what the three beach associations thought they'd have to pay and what the most recent bids came in at?
Well, of course, you have low to high bid, so there's quite a range.
Yeah.
But, I'm not sure what they contemplated, actually, but it apparently is more than they had budgeted or asked their membership to approve signing up for. So,
Tim, is there a timeline from WPCA at all?
Or from the DEP?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think the DEP is cognizant that Old Lyme has been working diligently for.
That would be a deadline that they would have. I'm talking about a timeline of, hey, we got a discrete timeline of we've got to have an agreement with Waterford. Who's working on that and when's that going to be in place? That was a frustration that I had with WPCA for a long period of time. It was kind of stumbling from one thing to the next.
Yeah.
Instead of figuring out the sequence that needed to happen, they were working on things that were kind of out of sequence, and then they had this monster agreement that was a lease/operating agreement/JV agreement.
Yeah.
So they got sidetracked a little bit. But at this point, it sounds like you got the bids outstanding. Okay, they're higher than people would like, but how long is that hemming and hawing?
I think the deadline for that is February to make a decision as far as the bid process. One would think that's a long time, but and a distinct possibility is to say to DEP, you know, it's just too expensive, and you've got to allow us to wait for things to settle down. If they don't settle down, who knows?
But WPCA does not have a time and responsibilities chart, like in project management, as you would say.
I'm not aware.
They haven't historically, so I'm just.
I'm not aware that the WPCA says DEP wants us to have this by a certain date. And I think given the circumstances, I think it would be very difficult for the DEP to turn ugly and say, we're going to fine you or do something. It's been working.
Because they've been concessionary, and I think they continue to be. But my concern is that, again, it's another meeting for the WPCA. Like, what is the goal of that meeting? Is it the attorneys are working on stuff or whatever, instead of having discrete milestones for these guys to move things ahead? And either fish or cut bait at some point, you know? I mean, this is...
Well, if one beach said we're not doing it, I don't know what would happen.
They can't. Yeah.
But I guess I'm hearing from you that
but Andy was...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just with the federal infrastructure bill that was passed, is there any possibility of any of those funds flowing from the state into Old Lyme?
That's a good point. I know that there have been representatives from the beaches and from WPCA on the phone with Courtney's office and Murphy's office scrounging for stuff. This new deal may be very propitious. If we could latch on to $3 or $4 million from Uncle, that could make everyone's day.
Just get it done.
Until the costs go up by $3 or $4 million.
But I mean, when you still at least get it done.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you get it done. Yeah. All right, so the movie continues.
TBC.
But it seems to me that the alternatives are either that or the engineers can come up with some way of reducing the cost of the project or
know.
the beach associations are willing to come up with more money. Aren't those the three alternatives?
Well, everybody would have to step up. Now, the other element is if the cost of the project is, say, 20% higher than everybody expected, just to throw something out, then the homeowners would be bearing the burden to amortize the cost over 20 years, 2%, without any, say, external grants to help out. So then there'd be a bit of a tussle because the homeowner would say, my property, because of the sewer, went up $20,000, but the cost of the sewer is $35,000. So I think the rule book says that delta might have to be borne by another party, ergo the town. So, you know, that's another trap too. And mind you, there is a Clean Water Act grant of 25%. Whether it's indexed up to whatever the cost is remains to be seen. But you know, so there's a Clean Water Money Fund. Then there's clean water financing for the individual home or property owners to pay over 20 years.
Recommend we move on. I don't think we
Yes.
can solve it.
Okay. Grassy Hill. Short and sweet.
Another piece of paper.
What's the new number?
Not smaller.
We have longer time. Here it comes.
Okay.
Reader's Digest.
Thank you.
Grassy
We have an
Hill,
extra.
We had extras.
Maria's.
the engineering is about wrapped up. And
Sorry, I moved myself. I'm here.
No, we were giving you the handout.
so you can see the first page, we've been doing this with Ridge Engineering actually back in 2018, and they've been, so basically when we started after some preliminary stuff, we started with $100,000, which was a capital public works, and we spent money there, and then it was carried over. So, as was mentioned, at the top of page 2, we spent the last $16,269 on engineering, and there's a small balance of $677 that was charged to the selectmen's budget to pay the last bill. The area below maps out what Jacobson has been doing, and as best I piece it together, it looks as if if you follow the spent columns, the 1st of October there, you come down and you can see that there's a number of 98,000, bold number 782.49. That's more or less the cost of the engineering, what we spent, and if you look to the left, 102,000, that's Jacobson is not giving us absolute guarantees on this. They're estimating what these things will cost. So you can see the third thing from the top, the line permits, that the estimate was 12,300. Actual is 19,445. So that's over by 7,100. And I think the logical explanation is that there are a lot of permitting changes and so forth that the state and federal people have implemented, and there's just been more work in that permit area. And when you figure the Corps of Engineers is going to take a year to issue its permit, permits are a big deal. So that that was a significant overspending. Some of the rest of the estimates we have not yet spent money on. So as well as I can estimate, we're going to have to spend about $10,500 to do the things that Jacobson has outlined to get to the point where it's in the hands of the Corps of Engineers and so forth. Now, I think I mentioned in the past that the Jacobson went up to the DOT office and they met with DOT and Corps of Engineers, and they asked for a modification how the bridge would look. Instead of 2 equal-sized pipes, they wanted to have a big one and a small one. And then the latest version is they want to have one large span, which will be a 16-foot span with no individual pipe type stuff. So all this stuff takes a modicum of engineering, and there'll be a request to extend to the DOT and a meeting up at the DOT and, load ratings and so forth. And some of these things are actually, we're fronting it that normally would have been paid by the project budget, but now it's the engineering budget. So, long story short, it looks like there's going to be, above and beyond the 100,000. It looks like there's going to be 10 or 15,000 more, but to get totally done with this engineering stuff. I think, similar to what was mentioned with the historic district, this is a hard thing to really be exact on, because if somebody asks for a new thing, some other factor comes along, then we have to do it, basically. We're kind of stuck. So I might suggest that these items that are yet to be spent, that we just let them accumulate maybe in the selectmen's engineering line, and then at some point when we're much clearer on where we're going, we could then make an appropriation and be clear it up.
Well, no matter what, right now we're under slightly.
Well, actually, we are $677 over the original $100,000 budget, because I had,
Oh, with the archaeological work.
Somewhere, so.
With the archaeological work.
So, if they come up with a, November bill of some sort, there could be 10.5 more to come. And that's not including anything that might new come to light, but hopefully we're pretty well done, according to our engineer. During the course of the inland wetlands, I'm not sure if we just sit idle or there would be some care and feeding needed for the engineering to answer questions or what, but hopefully it's very modest. But we could probably get more detailed information as this thing is truly submitted to the Corps of Engineers.
And the last estimate we had for the actual work itself, right, that was from the engineer, not based on any sort of bid from a contractor or anything else?
Yeah, all these things are engineering, so...
No. The million. Remember, it started out, hey, we got a grant, we've got a bridge that maybe could be replaced.
Yeah.
And now it's 1.2, but it's not going to be 1.2. And that 1.2 came from Jacobson, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. Right. It went from preliminary of 600 and some odd to final design of $1.2 million.
And then so we'll see where it comes out.
Yeah.
And I know that we've already spent this, but I mean, the concept of sunk costs at some point needs to come into play. But so this is just an FYI as well. If it does exceed by $10,000,
it would
is Tim suggesting that it could come out of engineering for?
That's the only place we can do it now is the selectmen's engineering account, because the 600 grand that we have in there.
Yeah.
Just for construction.
Right,
And so even in the current budget, I can't create a line item.
right,
You know what I mean? So it's the only place we can put it right now.
okay. And if we needed more because we depleted that for something else, and we needed another 10 grand.
But we're not getting 10 grand, we're just going overdraft, in the selectmen's engineering.
No,
10 or 12 or 15,
Yeah.
We'll clean it up sometime.
Right, but if turns out 4 months from now, we've got something that's another engineering thing that we had not anticipated, we had that kind of contingency in there.
Yeah.
The Board of Finance could, up to 20 grand.
And again-
we need to replenish that particular line item in the selectmen's budget.
And again, if this $1 trillion might sprinkle dollars, bridge sounds pretty much like infrastructure, so if we were to get lucky. Now, whether you could get new money to augment a 50% grant, I'm not sure what the rate would be.
Was it a 50%? Wasn't that original 600,000? That was what was supposed to do the bridge?
600 costs 300 reimbursement. Now it's $1.2 million, 600 reimbursement.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But if we could get a federal lollipop that would give us money on top of all that, that would be nice too.
Okay. Thank you. All right. EMT required training.
That came off the agenda today.
It came off the agenda? So we're good?
For now.
This was the one that was mailed.
Yeah. That came off.
So we're good on new business for...
There's nothing for new business.
I've got just a couple of quick things. First of all, our next meeting, we have to approve the dates for the next year that we meet and the times. And we can change that, but we're going to have to approve that in our December meeting, which is December 14th. It's not December 21st. So just keep that in mind as well. One question that we have talked about in the past, and now's a good time to maybe come to a conclusion, is the time of the meeting. So all of our meetings for budget, they're at 7 o'clock. For regular meetings, they're at 7:30. And we talked about moving those back potentially a little bit earlier because we have some late nights, and even tonight, we started at 7:30. It's going to be later than what folks would like. So if we started all of the meetings at 6:30 on a Tuesday night, would that be an issue for anyone?
No dinner for you, Tim.
How about a sand timer?
Let's see.
Let's 6:45.
6:45? I mean, anything...
Cutting into the children's hour,
I know, but...
No.
Because then we'll have 6-hour meetings. So that's my fear of that's my fear of moving it back.
6:30 would be hard for me,
Okay. And anyone
How about
else?
7 for all
What if
of
we
them?
just do 7 for all of them?
7 for all of them?
That helps.
That's a half an
Yeah.
hour off the regular meeting.
The regular meetings.
Yeah.
Is that good?
I find him killing that
That
half
would be-
hour anyway.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Like, gee, I could be here now at 7, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So, Michelle, if that can just be reflected in what we vote on.
And that would be
next month, that'd be
for 2022.
Begin at 7.
For
We're going to do them by
every
Starting
meeting.
January.
Yeah, starting in, yes.
You're
starting
talking
in
December or January?
January.
Okay.
Yeah, December meeting will still be at 7:30.
And it's a week early.
Is that okay with everyone?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yep, that works.
Cool. And then tomorrow night, now we've got a bunch of stuff going on, Grassy Hill Road Bridge and lots of other things, but we've also got the senior center that magically is $3.8 million. So we got
The drawing.
that's suggested. So that's going to be on our radar screen soon. But more immediately, tomorrow night at 6 p.m., the Ian Deviser is presenting on the $45 million of items that have been identified, and Andy is on the facilities committee, And so he's got a little bit of a preview, and they had given, I think, they gave
we didn't
one.
get much of a preview.
You didn't?
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Okay.
Well,
So maybe
did you get as
They have a
much
whole
as?
bunch of literature up on the school website
They
right now.
they do on the website, so yeah, strongly recommend
And
taking a
they'll
look at.
There's a meeting tomorrow night where it's being presented for the second
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, that's
So
what I
I'll
noticed.
do
So
Yeah,
that's
the previous presentation slides are all up there,
Okay,
and then there's a PDF that has a breakdown of the 4 or 5 different options they're
Yeah.
looking at.
I saw that. I
And so
haven't been
that's
to the
6
meeting.
PM tomorrow night, that's
Yep.
in the middle school, in the auditorium. So, spread the word, because that'll come as a big surprise to a lot of people. So, let's get it out there as early as possible so that everyone doesn't say, hey, what's the last minute, you know? Yeah.
David, what bonds do we have outstanding today? We have a little bit for this town hall still outstanding,
We got,
and we have our library.
Right.
Do we have the school construction?
They have the school construction bonds.
But we don't, we're not liable for that.
As a taxpayer.
well, ultimately, we are.
Yeah.
Well, we're liable to make our share of payments. but
Right.
From a credit, a balance sheet standpoint, that's not on our balance sheet.
Correct.
No,
Okay.
it's a contingent
And
liability.
similarly with the 45 million, that wouldn't be on our balance sheet, but it would be on our
But
budget.
it's a contingent liability, so.
Yeah.
Now, we are a small town, so it's not.
It doesn't make a lot of
It
difference.
doesn't make a lot of difference, except that your rating will be taken into account, but what's happening is that's burning off, right? Because the last bond that we took out, we had a 2-year construction period for the high school. The repairs that we had prior to that for the schools that are under significant consideration right now, that bond has already been repaired. That was a 20-year, repaid. That was a 20-year bond. So we've got outstanding, I think 9 more years, maybe? I gotta look at the.
Yeah, there's different schedules, about
What
5
in
different
principle?
bonds.
But that
There's a
last
drop-off,
one, yeah.
There's a
So-
drop-off. next
But do you
year.
know about how
A lot of
much in principle we have
refinancing over the
outstanding in bonds?
I don't, but last year's presentation for the school, they have the schedule, so.
It's in
not
our,
hard.
it's in our audit, all that schedule.
Yeah,
And we have the sewer. We're facing that as well.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying, is we got
Yeah,
a
there's
lot
a
of big
lot going
numbers
on.
that are gonna be out there, and so you're raising an issue of, hey, here we are today, what could all this stuff necessarily look like? Very quickly, it changes the nature of where we are. Now, if we've got debt outstanding, the actual debt service itself, if you're replacing bonds that are outstanding, but you're repaying them, but you're doing another project for 20 years, maybe the effect is not felt as much
That's what we need to
the
find
tax
out,
level.
right.
So there's a cash flow issue, and then there's a balance sheet issue. Those are
Well, but the cash flow is what hurts the taxpayers.
It could conceivably, yes, yeah. So, anyway, just if those can be on people's radar screen, or that meeting can be on people's radar screen, and please do spread the word, because the schools as well, we have a very extensive, for your guys' benefit, very extensive budget experience. Theirs is 80% of our budget, and it's literally one night of maybe a couple of hours of stuff. There are 3 official meetings, but it's very high level, and it's very directed, hey, you have to make a choice of 15 grand for trumpets or not. Everything else is...
Already decided.
Yeah. So, and Jude and I were involved long ago, and it was much more detailed. The issue is when people become aware of things that have happened, they don't have as much of an opportunity at the schools as they do here. I mean, this is granular. It's $100 that we can talk about ad nauseum sometimes. So getting people involved sooner rather than later and hearing everybody's input is really important, and making sure that if we're attending a meeting and there's one person there or 2 people there, which sometimes happens at the budget meetings, especially, it's very frustrating. And so the more folks that we can get there and better inform a community that we have, the better off we are. So.
For example, Dave, I went to the strategic planning.
I watched the video of that.
19 people out of the 2 towns showed up, and probably 8 of those were people who were running,
Right, right.
so maybe 10 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is nothing.
It did get a lot more, or some views on YouTube. I know that was a night when I was like, you know what, I'm just watching the video.
But I'm
It
saying
was a frustrating presentation to watch.
You couldn't,
Right.
I watched it
Yeah,
as well,
it was
you
very
couldn't hear,
frustrating. You couldn't hear,
and you couldn't see the slides.
Yeah.
But the people who do not have children in the schools pay even less attention, which makes it difficult.
Until they don't, that's the
Right,
pro-
and
and
then-
then,
right,
oh
right.
my gosh.
But my understanding of the process is that the Board of Education makes a unilateral decision. The Board of Finance of Old Lyme and Lyme can't affect that decision directly, and then it goes to a town meeting for a vote. So if it passes that town meeting vote,
District
It goes to a
the district meeting
referendum.
vote, we gotta pay our share.
Right.
You-
But, so
It would
the,
go to referendum.
it goes to referendum, but it's a referendum, it's not binding. So if it gets turned down, yes, you're gonna have another referendum, they'll go back and they'll shave a little bit of dough, whatever. But BJ's point is, there's no input from the Board of Finance in a very significant budget, which is fine, that's the way that it's set up. But the only real place that townspeople have to vote on it is for the overall budget, because it's a single line item, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and the other thing is the reimbursement. One program, the reimbursement's really, really low from the state, practically under 5% or something. And if you do, remember the bill
As new.
Yep.
which is more money, but more reimbursement. So because of the demographics, the town is going to get very little in the way of either one compared to other communities, but, you know.
I think it's 35% reimbursement for the qualified expenses that as new.
Yeah.
That's one of the things they looked at was the HVAC systems that they're looking to, that are part of this project, would be reimbursed because they're being added, because the schools don't have them.
Wasn't there a lot of COVID money for HVAC supposedly?
I think so.
I thought the schools were going to get.
but that's a good question too. I mean, those guys got $2.1 million or whatever it was.
I think the HVAC stuff is almost $15 million for the 4 schools.
I believe that, but it's not HVAC, it's AC.
Well, the boilers have to be replaced as well,
Right, but
supposedly.
because
they're 20 years old.
They didn't look at, but they're not 20 years old, they will be 20 years old.
Right.
20, they're 16 or 17 years old.
Yep.
So, anyway,
Yep.
but there's a lot
Those
of
are
questions.
questions to ask.
It's big numbers, and you'll see $45 million, maybe 3 numbers above that. So, ask questions about, you know, what's going into the
I have a
decision.
question that you may know the answer. Is the COVID relief money that they will be receiving, are they planning to use it as part of this project?
I don't
My
think so.
understanding is no, that it's for
It probably has to be-
outdoor learning spaces, things that are separate from an actual
And
renovation,
it may have to be
rebuild
spent
project.
before this project will actually go. Because it's,
What I
you know,
thought.
and it's not going to be,
Right.
if it is $45 million, it won't be one $45 million note. It'll be like last time where it's staged
Right.
in 10, 12, whatever.
And here's 20
But
grand.
still,
Yeah.
because they won't do all the schools at once, that'd be
No.
too disruptive.
Okay.
Time to move.
They're going to try to vote on it this spring, I think.
Yeah.
Is their goal, is to move it fast and have a referendum in the spring.
Well, they're talking about moving 5th graders around schools
Yeah.
and kindergartners around. And,
Which has all been done before.
yeah.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
that's old is new again.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so minutes, and you got a lot of stuff for Selectmen's report?
The old minutes?
Mr. First Selectman?
He gave it.
We're gonna do minutes first, but do you have a long Selectmen's report, or a couple of things?
In the entrance.
Sand time.
All right. August 17th.
How did they get
I'll entertain a motion to accept or approve the minutes of August 17th.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Garvin, okay. Comments?
Yeah, I think this has been held for a couple of months only
Right.
because I couldn't add up correctly in the last paragraph on page 3, or page 2, rather,
Two.
business carryovers. And Nicole, do you have a copy of the minutes in front of you?
To reconcile with Nicole.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, it's been sent back several times in order to get clarification of how the numbers add.
The notes I had said table these minutes until it's reconciled with Nicole, so I don't know what the,
Well,
This is where the problem came in, is it had to do with this number, as opposed to this number, I think it was. They had questions about it.
yeah, the last word in that paragraph is the number 13,
Do you remember these guys?
1,310,049. I just want to know what numbers add up to that.
I think they were questioning this.
the last comment.
I have to look.
Well,
I can't off the top of my head.
Yeah, right.
Real quick.
Nicole, may I? Thank you.
That were in question.
Did you tape the meeting? The meeting tape?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe I can listen to that.
Well,
Do you have a copy of that?
I suggest that we go to the other minutes and let Nicole have a minute or two just to look at the paragraph.
Do you want to look at, I have copies of it.
I do here.
I'm not going to be able to get it by the time.
Well, we can just look at this right here. To dispense with it.
Well, okay, I don't care who does it.
Total carryovers from 15-16 is 318,057. Carryover in 21-22 were discussed, along with discussion on the lower mill pond that were carried over.
The number you say is 7
Well, so the numbers I'm adding are 1,041,992 plus 318,057 minus 149,926. That's how I read the paragraph, but if I add those three numbers, I get 1,210,000, not 1,310,000. But I'm not sure I'm adding the right numbers.
Well, the original carryovers from the prior years was 318,057.
Right?
Mm-hmm. The final number was 268,057.
Where do you see the 268?
It's on the final carryover that Michelle just gave.
But it's not in the minutes. It's not in the minutes.
Well, no, but it relates to the next item. So the carryovers in 2021 were discussed for 104,992, so that's all set, along with the discussion of the lower Mill Pond dam funds that were carried over in 1920.
150,000.
As well as a capital amount of the same. It was decided to remove the lower Mill Pond carryover in the amount of 149,926 from 1920 and keep the 150 allocated in 2021. So that number is correct. So
when I'm adding 19,
so what numbers do
20,
you think we should add?
I'm getting 1,360,049. So is there just a typo that should be a 6 instead of a 1?
No, so the 1041992 is correct. The total carryover from previous years was 318,057. It was decided to remove, and that ended up being 268,057.
I think you're...
So that got reduced by $50,000.
Exactly. A typo or a single line item
Right.
missing. That even.
Right, yeah, it's off by 50,000.
Exactly.
It still needs to
Dollar.
be verified, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Whether it's a typo or a single line item that's missing, but be that exact of a number.
Yeah. Okay. 1041, correct. 992.
And this is this month.
That is this?
Yeah, but that's still available as of
Okay.
21st, at the end of June.
Very interesting, David. Those two numbers add up to the 1,310,049. Just the 1,041 plus the 268,057 add up to the 1,310,000.
It looks like it does.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it does.
I can still do that arithmetic. But it doesn't account for the words in this paragraph.
Right, exactly. That's a good way to put it.
That's what I'm looking at.
Sentences that kind of don't make sense.
But that's what I'm looking at, the 6/30/2021.
Yep. Yeah, the whole 149, 150 is all, that's all confusing.
But I do remember we had the 149, 929 in there, and the 150, but those were removed. Or the 149.
Should have come out.
No, just the 150 is still in here,
Right. But the other two.
So,
but the 149, 926 is gone.
I had to go look back and look at my June carryover,
Right.
this current one.
Here's the June one right here.
Does that
I
still?
mean, I have certain,
Yep.
I have my notes on what we did, so I guess I'll have my original
Yeah.
to answer it.
All right, hey, look, let's table it then.
but this is the last time, 3 times and we're out.
3 times and we're out.
Table it one more time, and now Nicole is on it, so she
Okay.
can come back to the next meeting with the right words.
So I made the motion, I withdraw the motion, or
Yep. You want to withdraw?
I'll withdraw my
I'll
motion.
keep these two
Yeah, move to
together.
table.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion to table the August 17, 2021 minutes.
Back to the bottom of the pile.
Mr. Russell, is there a second?
What, to remove it?
Second to table it.
Oh, table it, I'll second.
Okay.
So we don't
I
have
haven't-
them again.
Separate.
I don't think there's any discussion on motion to table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Well, unsatisfyingly unproductive.
Table until November meeting.
September 21st.
Committee voted.
For discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the September 21st minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll give it to Jude.
Sorry, thanks.
All right. Any discussion, comments, et cetera? September minutes? Anyone need any more time? Okay, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay. All right. Thompson abstains. All right. Motion carries. Okay. October 19th. Motion to approve, I'll entertain from somebody. Carvin, is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or discussion?
I just have a question. Under the financial report, it says that questions were asked by email, then it says no questions were raised. Is that indicating no questions were raised at the meeting, or also no questions were raised by email?
No, because the emails would have been subsequent, and that was because we didn't have our finance director here to answer questions. That was
Okay, so
the
had
reason.
there been emailed questions, those would have been entered into the minutes?
The
No.
following.
The
following month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question on page 5, under Soundview Sewer Project. The third sentence reads, there was a question as to if the ARPA funds can be used toward this project. However, that would only benefit the rest of the town.
What does that mean?
And that, I thought the concept would be it would only benefit a portion of the town, namely the folks who were getting the sewers.
I understand what you're saying. That makes more sense.
Yeah, it does, actually.
Are there any other comments or questions besides that one? Should we table this and just have, Michelle, do you want to listen to the tape and just clarify that?
I know exactly what was said. It was that if we used the funds for the Soundview Sewer project, it would only be benefiting a portion of the people in the town, and not all of the townspeople. That's exactly what was said.
So change
worded it wrong, but-
change the rest to a portion,
Correct.
and then we're good?
Yep.
All right, so let's
Take a vote.
take the vote on the amended minutes as revised. All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Excellent, okay. Selectmen's report.
The short one.
Yeah.
Want me to give it?
Transfer station, scale house. Rough plumbing and electric in, sheet rock in and painted. The FRP wall covering will be going this week, and the floor will be done hopefully by the end of the week. We're still looking to occupy during the first week of December. Senior Center expansion. This is a rendition of what the Senior Center, there are two options. And essentially the white portion of the building is existing and the blue would be addition. And the pink is the outdoor space, like an outdoor terrace type thing. This version's 3.4. And another version is 3.8. Now, some communities have gotten grant money for their senior centers. I did mention during the meeting that this has a little bit of competition with Region District 18, so they need to be aware of that. But, you know, it's a very handsome, these are the overhead, the pictures of the structure, and it's quite handsome. They have a lot of space. I think the senior feels that it's their turn to be given some consideration to upgrade their facility, so we'll see where it goes.
And that would be shared 50/50 with Lime?
Is it 50%?
75-25.
75/25, that's right.
Let me just make a comment. I'm a newly appointed member of the building committee, and Tim correctly repeated the phrase, it's our turn, but I don't think that's really an appropriate comment. It's not that the senior center should get money and take it away from somebody else. My own view at my age is that the senior center benefits the majority of the citizens of Lyme and Old Lyme, and we owe it to ourselves and our parents to support it. That's my only comment. Jerry Baker, the chairman of the committee, did send around an electronic version of these plans, and if you folks would like that, I'd be happy to forward it. So I do that. I'll just forward the electronic version to everybody on this committee.
I think they're also available through the senior center at this point. I could be
probably right,
but you can go to their website, I believe, and access it.
I guess one of the things in talking with Dan Hagan when this first started was I want to know the logic behind it, because usage and who belongs and how much charges, people or fees people get and all. It's $5. You got to be 55 years old. It's not like it's 70 years old and up. So there's free yoga maybe. I don't know what the deal is, but generating a need for space can be easy if the price is right and that sort of thing. And also, the senior center was a significant investment, and one of the disappointments that Hagan and I both had was walking it. It's been left to rot. So if you go around, it needs to be, at this point, resided. If you were to just renovate what they've got there, it is in terrible, terrible shape, which doesn't give me good confidence to give folks $3.4 million if this is the way that you treat something that already exists. So I would definitely suggest walking around and thinking about that.
Well, I mean, that's news to me, and I'm disappointed to hear it.
Yeah.
But I'm disappointed not only for the fact of it, but for the responsibility of it. The senior center is owned by the town of Old Lyme and the town of Lyme.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not in my view, Jerry Baker's or the chairman of the board's responsibility to maintain it, but rather the two towns. And if we've fallen down on that, shame on us.
Well, this was 3 years ago. There was a directive not to request, and it is in the purview of the board to ask for things and that sort of thing. And so I know that things have been held off, and it wasn't just when Jerry came on board. I mean, the thing was a mess for a long time.
No. All I'm saying is it should be our building folks that look after that as any of the other town buildings.
Yeah.
It's ours to maintain.
I guess, yeah.
I think that project had it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, because you've been around this a lot longer than I have. It was a lot of grassroots effort to come up with additional funding to make that project happen when it did happen.
When it was first built.
When it was first built. And I'm not defending either side here, but I think there was a long period when I was on the Board of Finance the first time that they had a very disorganized board that couldn't get the pedal to the metal. They did not work well together, and they did not bring their needs list or present well to the Board of Finance or any other agency in town. And I think there was maybe a 5, 10, 12-year gap when things like that were not being addressed. So I think there was a lot of time that was wasted. And I'm not saying we should be for it or not, but I think
that was also a long time ago.
So it was, and now we need to make it better.
It's not atypical for people to let things go and then say, "Oh my gosh, we need something new."
Well, I think they also went saying, "Well, we want to fix the porch, so we won't take this money to do some work as well." And they also kept putting it off by choice. So I think it's,
Well, we had allocated money for...
and they didn't use it.
Yeah, they didn't use it because all of a sudden there was a new group that came in.
Right, it was a new administration and
cheap
new
art
approach.
classes and cheap
Yep.
yoga.
Yep,
And
agreed. So it's,
Yeah, it's an ambitious project, and I don't think that I've gotten, and again, this is from the outside, I haven't heard the needs, like what are the programs, or what are the space needs, that sort of thing.
That has to be
yeah.
articulated.
And I've asked twice, I asked Stephanie and
That's
Jerry.
more of a concern than, hey, we gave you something. You
How many-
didn't-
The question is why?
How many members are there from Lyme and Old Lyme?
That's
How
the
many
question.
people from Lyme and Old Lyme use it?
Yeah.
And
How many
they
people
keep
from
saying
outside are
they
from
have
Right.
no way of tracking this, and I find that hard to believe.
I thought they did. I thought they were,
They were tracking usage
yeah,
and membership,
right.
but if I ask
1,500, but there are
1,500,
other towns too.
but then they went on to say, well, during COVID, we were down to 200, and now we're back up to 700 and something. There needs to be some clarification in these numbers.
We gotta get that damn thing open.
So it's not
That'd be
even
nice.
open, right?
Very restricted.
Right.
You know, the seniors need the socialization, they probably all have their shots, so.
Yep.
Anyway, so for consideration, but BJ, you just started, do you know the timing expectation of when?
No, but
'Cause I know there's
you're-
been a public
But
presentation.
you're on point. So, the Point One architects have just come out with these plans, and now the time is to sell the plans to both communities and to look for financing. With the expectation, as with any proposed project, there are going to be comments and modifications and iterations.
Yeah.
So this is just, something to react to.
And if there are needs and it's used and it's our community that's using it, totally supportive. But some basic questions have weirdly been danced around to date. And they had three options, because Hagan, I think, was on the building committee as well.
I don't know Hagan.
So he's the
Board of Finance
chair up in Lyme.
He chaired the building committee, didn't he, for the senior
School.
project?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was the Board of Ed chair for a while and that sort of thing. So, but at any rate, and he was asking those questions too, and ended up with kind of three to, hey, we tear the whole thing down and we build something new, and it's this, or we renovate. There was no renovate as is, but each of the options, there wasn't a corresponding, hey, this is what we think is required, and here's how we're meeting those needs with our space. So,
Right,
anyway,
and I don't have the answer to
No,
the
no.
question of what sort of the empirical basis for saying we need to expand to this, that, or the
Right,
other thing.
right.
But those are the kinds of questions that need to be
yeah.
addressed.
And there's no reason, because there should be a logic to it. If it's just we want a new, nice building, and we've spent all this money on architects
Right.
to do that,
Right.
I hope that's not the case.
Right,
I
no,
would
I
think it would be.
yeah, and I'm too new to be able to
Yeah.
answer it. But the fact of the matter is that the usage of the senior center and the membership, as Tim says, has grown from maybe 500 members some years ago to 1,500 members over a relatively short period of
They lowered
time.
the age to...
Right.
Lower the age.
They lowered the age, and they got a huge bump up.
Well,
in-
but in any event, that the usage of the senior center has ballooned, and I assume, because they want to do this, that they have a basis to say it's the demand exceeds the physical capacity
Sure.
of the space, but we need to concretize
Yeah.
that.
Jerry indicated after the meeting that she would like to start going around to committees, commissions, and start doing presentations in February.
If you guys could feed some initial feedback, I mean, some obvious questions that folks are going to have, because the number,
Yeah.
people are going to fall off their chair, and then they've got $45 million over here. That could be reduced, but still, it's a big number. We just did $2.5 million turf practice field, so we know that the main field will be coming soon. So we've got, the sewers coming. So we got a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so having her ducks in a row, would be very helpful in getting that feedback early instead of just selling the pretty pictures.
I don't think that the senior center is poised to come before the Board of Finance and ask for our share of $3.8 million or $3.4 million.
Yeah. Unless we get a big dollop from the Fed, and everyone's happy.
And do they plan any private financing or fundraising?
They are. They
Similar to the way
contacted
it
Joe
started.
Courtney's office. They are looking at
Yeah.
ARPA money. They're looking at COVID money, anything they
So
can
that
get.
makes a big difference.
Yep.
So all of a sudden it's $1 million per town or $1 million and
Or
whatever.
$750 if we're lucky.
That's,
It's all collectively printed.
we just extended Tim's report. That wasn't his fault.
Oh, Jesus. Sorry, Tim. Sorry, everyone else.
All he said was senior center.
Oh, shoot.
Zingers and
You thought you were finished, Tim.
All right, Ames Open Space, I mentioned earlier that that's not going to town meeting very soon. I'm not sure where that is, but we also have Roger Davis who wants to buy that lot up on Rogers Lake, that he's all set, ready to go when the town meeting comes around, so either before or the January town meeting for that. Halls Road, I sent a letter to the chairman to withdraw the petition for the amendment for the Halls Road Village District, which occurred, and so I think at this point the group is going to meet tomorrow, the committee.
Is it tomorrow or Thursday?
It's Thursday, 7:30.
Thursday, yeah, Thursday. So I think they'll be talking about what to do and where to go and so forth. I also had a conversation with Matt Prosser, who was I would say the primary contact at O-Line Stores, and he let me know that the O-Line Stores has not actually been brought up to date on what the village district changes. He looked through things and was pretty alarmed that some of the new zoning regulations could make it very difficult for him with the existing shopping center with respect to distances from the road and so forth. I don't know all the nuances, but he's actually happy that it's not moving forward so that he can have some input. So I think one of the messages must be, has the Halls Road Committee engaged the business owners or the property owners along Halls Road to make sure that they understand what the village district changes will be and solicit comments from them, because after all, those are the people who will have to deal with it. So that's going to happen. Let's see. Tanamahague, I think we're at the point with Tanamahague that we are asserting that we own it, despite the fact that the abutters claim that they own it. We either will be, I think if we maintain that we own it, then if they say they own it, they're going to have to sue us. If they sue us, it could be years in a legal issue and probably tens of thousands of dollars to get it answered. We certainly would be able to press for prescriptive easement or adverse possession, because we've been using it for 300 years after all. The other possibility is that we could canvass some of the neighboring community, Colt Road, and maybe a wider network to say, okay, here's the rub. The rub pretty much, I think, is that the owners are not welcoming cars to park down near the landing itself. There's a space that we had identified for 2 parking spots so that cars could go down there and park, only 2. So if somebody had a kayak and there were the 3rd car, they'd have to go down and put the kayak on the ground and park up above. So a possibility would be that if the public said parking down there is not an absolute, we might be able to cut a deal without going legal, let's say, to have that kind of an accommodation. So there have been discussions with a couple of members on Colt Lane. I think we want to try to have a group of people from that area and just take a pulse, because they're the ones that are closest to it, and see what they think. And then we have talked with the owners independently and said that despite what they claim, we think we could agree. We're not going to say who owns it, and just come up with an acceptable agreement between them and the town about how the property is used. And I think the only wrinkle is the parking. So, work in progress. But obviously, it was a surprise to us all when they announced that they concluded that they own it. The wage and salary survey for the employees is underway. Various people have been interviewed by the company, and that process is going forward. It's supposed to conclude by the end of the year, so we're looking forward to see how things come out with that. The ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Committee, 12 members have met twice. They're meeting Wednesday, tomorrow. And I believe they want to create a survey so that could respond based on questions posed in a survey. I think ultimately a recommendation in a general sense would be sent to the Board of Selectmen, and probably a town meeting. It would be presented so that there'd be a framework with legislative approval, and then be flexibility on how to actually fund either individual requests or a group of requests. With respect to, say, business requests, the COG has identified a committee in Middlesex that is under the wing of the Middlesex Chamber that could do underwriting for us or any COG community. So if a number of businesses said, gee, we've suffered and we'd like money, then there could be a service provided by this group in Middletown that would be like a bank. They could do our underwriting for us, and we would not be burdened with that. So we're trying to look for ways to put a firewall between the all-town group of employees and what could be a number of requests.
It's not the same guys from West Haven, is it?
But at a discount.
They're doing work cheap these days.
Our assessor Melinda, presented a letter to us asking that she would be allowed to serve as the part-time assessor for the town of Lyme, which I guess has lost its assessor. She said that the time commitment would be 4 hours a week, that she could be absent, say, on a Tuesday morning from 8 to 12, work in Lyme, and that she could make up those hours after workday, because a lot of her work is around and looked at property, not necessarily be in the office waiting to talk to people coming in. So we debated it at the Board of Selectmen last night and made a motion to approve her to do this. I guess she indicated that there are towns where the assessor will work in more than one town. And so long as she said, look, if this starts interfering with my function here in Lyme, say with a reval, like our next one's going to be a physical reval, so that gets pretty busy. I asked her how long it might take to get the person who will become the assessor, and she thinks it might be 2 to 3 years of kind of on-the-job training. You know, you're talking 4 hours a week. So But hopefully that might go faster. But in any event, the understanding would be she is our assessor, and to the extent that this can be done, you giving us the requisite hours, why we thought it would be worthwhile, and if it becomes untenable, she understands that it would have to end.
Do we have any policy existing on someone working for the town as well as working in another community? Has this come up before?
It's come up before, but not quite this way. There are people who serve as either sanitarians or fire marshals and things like that, supposedly on their own time. You have to be religious about that, and we do have timesheets. So if she were going to work during the workday, say as he suggests, that would be documented, and then she would also document when she's working after hours, doing things that don't require public access. So I think we would be able to, if we saw that things were not going well, I think we'd have a conversation with her and say, either it's got to end or something's got to give. But it's a problem because the number of assessors in Connecticut that are available are not sufficient to meet the demand. So, and we have such a respect for the town of Lyme that we would like to help them. Send them the bill for the parking lot.
Why don't they reimburse us for her time?
Yeah. Have her do her part of her hours here.
But she's not cutting her time.
Our sustainable old Lyme team put an interesting PowerPoint together last night. The team has earned the silver designation, which is the current highest level that can be awarded by the Connecticut Sustainable. And so they've been working on recycling, on food waste recycling, on MIRA, on creating an area for people if they have invasive plants such as Japanese knotweed, which is pervasive back here behind the town hall. You could bring that stuff and have it dry out and become inert. So it's quite an achievement. We're the only town in New London County to have achieved silver, and I think there's a couple people that we want to get the recycling committee back together. There's some very interesting people in our line to work on the food composting, which you could start with the school and maybe restaurants and have an anaerobic process maybe at the landfill and start working on things like that. Everything helps our waste stream. I mean, I don't know that food recycling is going to make a big dent in 712,000 tons of garbage we generate a year, but
it's pretty heavy.
About 900 pounds a person. But, hopefully people could, I have one of these little black composting things in the back, and you just keep putting stuff in there with grass clippings, and in a year you get a bunch of topsoil, tip it over, and start again. So, good stuff. So, congratulations to Cheryl Poirier. Got a letter from the state of Connecticut which confirmed that the census did not change the composition of the school board. Because we pay more and more and more because Lyme has less open space than Lyme. We are increasing our percentage of the school budget, and at some point they're going to lose a member. It's kind of like the state of Connecticut and its federal reps to Congress, but they're safe for 10 years keeping the 2 reps that they have. So that's the end of my recitation.
All right. Thank you very much, Tim.
Could you hand these out? Information.
Oh, I would love
Oh, yeah.
Send it back to you.
Yeah, actually, if everyone can just check their information and then give it to Michelle before we leave, that'd be great.
Do you have more than one copy?
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, now I got two.
Back to you, so the changes, then I won't confuse it. Okay, I keep it out of my recycling bin.
And your H is silent, right?
Yeah, correct.
Is that called an aspirant H?
And a spirit eighth. Linguistics major down there.
The aspirant,
My husband's family is German, so
yeah. Yeah.
German-speaking part of Switzerland.
It's just the French,
South of Thames.
when they have an H,
Right.
they call it an aspirant.
Yeah, I say it's like how you drop the H in Thomas. It's the same way.
You just don't, you ignore it, and T-U-M-A.
I was here, but I wasn't
Remember.
I wasn't a guest, so I don't know what.
You have a landline telephone?
I do not.
Okay.
No landline.
You ready to make your motion?
Yeah.
I was here in the audience. But I wasn't table.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Garvin and Russell second, all in favor? say aye.
Aye.
Garvin,
Garvin and Russell.
you want to go?
Right, you know? But they're, unless you spend 45 million.
Thank you all on the phone.